And they come walking on, and they're like, they're on a movie set, so they're nervous to begin with. And they look over, and there's Jeff Daniels, like, and we're like, they're like, what kind of movie is this?
Hello, Blenders. It's Sean O'Connell, the managing editor at CinemaBlend and a co-host of the ReelBlend podcast. And it is time for a brand new ReelBlend interview. This time it's Peter and Bobby Farrelly, who are joining us on behalf of their new film, Dear Santa. If you guys were paying attention to the channel, you will know that earlier this week, we had Giovanni Ribisi, the cinematographer, for Strange Darling on. And at the end of that one, I sort of teased that we have this one coming up. I really wish I got a chance to do this one with the boys. So Jake Hamilton and Kevin McCarthy, the other co-hosts of the show, handled the Farrelly brothers. It's just, you guys know with our timing, we're often juggling multiple interviews and multiple opportunities. And weirdly enough, the schedule has landed so that the Giovanni Ribisi interview and the Farrelly brothers interview were at the exact same time on the exact same day. So thankfully, as a team, we're able to sort of divide them up. And some of us are able to handle some, and some of us are able to handle the others. So the boys took the Farrelly brothers. But a reason why I wanted to talk to them is because specifically they shot the film Shallow Hal with Jack Black here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I wanted to almost pick their brains about what it was like filming here. One of the things I like to do with Judd Apatow is whenever he talks Talladega Nights, because he was a producer on that show, they shot that all around Charlotte. And his wife, Leslie Mann, really wanted to move to Charlotte, and we always talk about that whenever they bring that up. And I wanted to get the Farrelly brothers' take on filming here in North Carolina. But still, I trust the boys. I love their conversations. I knew they were going to bring up some really interesting stuff. I love the premise behind Dear Santa. I haven't had a chance to see the film yet myself, but I think it's a really clever concept about a boy who is writing a letter to Santa Claus, but he spells Santa wrong and ends up sending a letter to Satan, as one does. And then Jack Black pops up as Satan. And if you're going to cast Satan in a Farrelly Brothers comedy, I think Jack Black is the perfect one to get. So happy Black Friday if you're listening to this as it drops. Otherwise, happy day to whoever is listening to this whenever you're listening to it. And this is the Farrelly Brothers together on behalf of their new comedy, Dear Santa, on the ReelBlend podcast.
As somebody who grew up watching your films, this is truly an honor to be able to chat with both of you. I'm going to start off with kind of a big picture question because I thought to myself the idea of 3 wishes and I wanted to apply that to filmmaking. And if someone were to come to me and offer me 3 wishes of 3 film sets in the history of film to go visit, that you could be there on that set to see that movie get made and see that shot happen, for each of you, what would be the 3 sets that you wish you could have been on just to experience what that would have been like?
Wow, that's a question I hadn't given a lot of thought to. For some reason, the one that popped right into my head was Animal House, just because.
Yeah.
Yes.
It looked like they were having so much fun.
Yeah.
And all those, incredible actors, comedic actors, and I don't know. That was one for me.
This is such a cliche, but Wizard of Oz, I guess I would like to see.
You were just a kid, though, right?
I was just going into the Army, World War II, and the GI Bill.
You look great then.
Any other sets that you guys
this
like?
is a different set. Like Animal House was. I'm saying that because it looked like there was so many people and so much fun and all that. But a different set where it was just more like movie making. But the way they did it was Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Oh yes.
2 actors. I would love to watch how they set up shots and just watching Paul Newman and Robert Redford.
Cuckoo's Nest for me.
Yeah,
Cuckoo's Nest, probably my all-time favorite movie. And to be around, first of all, those actors, incredible. I think Jack Nicholson's performance is that I think it's the best performance I've ever seen in my life. And to be around Milos Forman and watch him at work, the director, it would have been something else.
Yeah.
Could you imagine being on the 2001 set?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
I thought you were saying they did a remake of Cuckoo's Nest in 2001.
No.
I never saw that one.
I always heard a story, and I really hope it's true, that the year that Nicholson lost the Oscar for Chinatown, someone came up to him and said, you really should have won. And he goes, I'm shooting this movie called Cuckoo's Nest right now. He goes, that's what I'll win for. And he did. And I really hope that story's true.
Yeah. And in fact, when I think he was introduced if I recall, at that Oscars, the Oscars for the first one, he couldn't be there because he was on the set of Cuckoo's Nest, and they went to him, like zoomed to him
Yes.
on the set with all the, Danny DeVito was like, acting.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I think that was the BAFTAs because I think he won the BAFTA, and so I think his acceptance speech was from the speech. Yeah.
Okay, that's what there you are. By the way, before we go further, I have to point out, one of the guys who we've worked with many times before, and we worked with on this script, is Pete Jones, a local Chicago guy. So
yes, exactly right. Oh yeah, absolutely. One of the coolest things I've learned about living in Chicago is that it doesn't matter what movie you cover or who you talk to, all roads lead here in some form or fashion. Someone involved with the crew, someone involved in the writing staff is going to be from Chicago, have Chicago connections, which is one of the reasons I love living here. Speaking of Chicago, I got to tell you, I have loved explaining to people the concept of this movie. It's such a great premise, but it's so good, in fact, that whenever I first heard the premise, I thought, how did no one come up with this idea before? I'm sort of curious, did you guys ever pause and think, okay, someone has to have made the Santa Satan connection before in a movie? Because it's one of those that's just like it's right there, and it's so genius, and I can't imagine how no one else thought of it.
I know, to me it's snakes on a plane. As soon as you hear it, you're like, oh, there you go, that's a movie. No, like when we first heard it, Kevin Barnett and Pete Jones took us the idea, and they said, kid writes a letter to Santa, but he misspells it and writes to Satan instead.
It's very high concept. I think that the reason why maybe it hasn't been done before is it's a great high concept, but it's not easy to pull off, particularly with a Christmas story. So it was a little tricky, but hopefully we did it.
Yeah, you're walking a fine line there, and you're appealing to, there's some you got to be careful with the kids because it's PG-13 or PG or
PG-13.
PG-13. We want to point that out. We don't want, this is a Christmas story for kids, PG-13 age and up. It's not for 4-year-olds. It wouldn't be good for them, but it would be great for an 11 or 12-year-old.
And
up.
I snuck out of my my newsroom to come do this interview, and I was walking out with my boss, and I said, "Hey, I gotta pop out here. I'm talking to the Farrelly brothers," and she goes, "Oh, like what's their new movie?" And I explained the concept, and she just laughed and shook her head and said, "Okay," and walked in. It was the best reaction.
Yeah, I think it was the easiest pitch we've ever heard, where you're like, yeah, it literally, they said it was, we'll do that.
Yeah, it's a great premise.
One of the questions I've always been fascinated with, and I remember asking the Coen brothers this question, is how you decide who is the director on the credit. And correct me if I'm wrong, but some of your films, both of you are directors.
Yeah.
Some of your films, it's one of you. So I was just curious how that worked. I remember the Coen brothers said it's something to do with the DGA and how it was like listed. But for each of you, how do you decide if it's a collaboration or is it just one of you?
Well, normally it was always the two of us, including Dumb and Dumber, which I was credited on, but we both directed, because when we did it, we hadn't gotten approval from the DGA up front, and we didn't know you had to. And then when the movie was done, they're like, yeah, you had only one director. I said, well, we both directed it. And they're like, yeah, but you can only have one. You didn't get pre-approval. Like, you're shitting me. So we flipped
the thumb wrestled.
Yeah.
I got pinned. He got the credit.
Yeah. But since then we all, like, we've, we always did it together. We got approval. It was always two of us, unless we're doing our own movie. Like, he directed this entire thing by himself. And I wrote it with Ricky Blitt, who's a friend of ours. So, yeah. This
was a little different. We weren't both on the set, so this one was, just me. Pete wrote it, and we co-produced it.
I say this, like, when we co-direct a movie, we're so similar that we're basically doing the exact, it's not a battle. Like, oh, I don't know about that. What about this? It's like, yeah. Okay. So being both there is only to have a better time. Like, it's more fun. We have, like, good dinners on the weekends, hang out with the crew, but you really don't need us both. You need one of us.
As a quick follow-up, my brother and I have never worked together, so I don't know what I would learn about him if we were in a working environment, and that's an interesting thing to me. So I'm wondering what you learn about each other when you work together that you didn't know.
Well, first of all, let me say this: I could never work with your brother.
Me neither.
He's so No, you know, we grew up in the same, you know, we had twin beds, same room. We're a year and a half apart. We grew up, we always hung out with the same friends. You know, we didn't have two different groups of friends. It was always like, so we weren't learning much about each other on the set that we didn't already know, I think.
Because there's two of us like the Coen brothers, I think it's easier to protect our vision of how we do things.
That's right.
Because there's a tendency for everything to get watered down, to make it a little bit more vanilla, and make it look like whatever was good last year, you know. And we kind of stick to our guns because there's two of us, so we prop each other up. So we've been able to have more of a distinct voice,
like the Zucker brothers and Jim Abrams and the Coen brothers and, you know, the Wachowskis and the Hughes. You could fight better because there's two of you. Because if there's one, they beat you down, and you're like, and then the other guy's like, don't do this, you know.
Right.
Yeah, so that helps a lot.
That's cool.
You know, Kevin and I talk a lot about how we wish people appreciated comedy more. Kevin often talks and points to the bathroom scene from Dumb and Dumber, but just this idea of like, you know, there are so many great moments in comedy that we wish were, not that it's about awards, but that we wish were a part of the awards conversation. And I'm sort of curious, you know, I'm often told that comedy is obviously harder than drama. What is a moment in each of your filmographies, a great comedic moment that you wish that people just appreciated how difficult it was to pull off? Because I think people think comedy is just a fun, easy thing, and it's not. Like, it's a great comedy, as you guys know and have crafted many times. It's not easy to pull off.
No, and I will say this, like when I did Green Book, at the end, people were like, wow, that must have been hard going into a drama. It was the easiest movie I've ever done. And I'm telling you, it really was. First of all, the script was great. Nick Vallelonga and Brian Curry and I wrote it, but it was really solid. And we had Viggo Mortensen, Mahershala Ali, who are the two of the greatest actors on the planet. We did it in 32 days. It was like nothing. It was a breeze. It was painless. Comedy's way, way harder, way harder. And if people knew the degree of difficulty of doing that Three Stooges movie, which I love, because we had to write brand new, we had three characters that everybody knew, and they had to be exactly like those three characters. But we wrote all new material, but it had to feel like it was their old material. And yet we're trying to take it to a new generation. My fear in that movie was that two of the actors would be amazing and one would be so-so. And those three actors are so good in that movie that, you know, I take such pride in that, because the way it was cast,
right?
The writing.
It wasn't one of our biggest hits, but I completely agree with you, because the degree of difficulty was very high.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember that junket? That was one of the all-time great, where they did the junket in character.
Oh yeah.
It was incredible.
I was on that floor for the junket for that movie, and I got a tap on my back, and someone's asking me where the gym is, and it was Paul McCartney. I'll never forget that. Like, he was asking me where
at
the
Three Stooges junket.
Yeah, the Four Seasons. I'll never forget that.
We were working on a song with him during that time, so he was hanging around.
Oh.
Like, I'm kidding. I have no.
Dude, I bought that.
I bought that too.
I'm kidding. But
Run with it.
yeah. By the way, you know what happens a lot? Here's what's funny. We get this a lot. People come up and they'll say, like, you know, you made my favorite movie of all time, man. It's the all-time favorite movie. I'm so grateful. Thank you. Can I give you a hug? And they're like, Fargo, man, that is so good. That is such a good movie. I always just say, great, thank you. I mean,
yeah. I mean, No Country for Old Men was better, but you know, we can give him Fargo.
That's very kind of you.
Pardon me, because I'm gonna go back to my 10-year-old self for a second. So I'm watching Dear Santa, and the PJ Byrne IBS scene. I'm 40 now. I was laughing at that like I did when I saw Dumb and Dumber and Jeff Daniels in the bathroom scene when I was 10 years old. And it really solidified to me that farts will always be funny. I don't care how old I get. It still makes me laugh. And so I was wondering if you could look at both of those scenes 30 years apart, and the idea of why toilet humor or fart humor still resonates, why it's still so funny, And what is the sound effect choice in the edit like when you're doing those? And do the actors have any of that? Like, did Jeff Daniels have the squeak that makes him laugh at the end of that? I'm just curious, like, what's the process on scenes like
I'm
that?
gonna let him answer that, but Jeff did not have the squeak. He had no noises. He's just doing everything, and then we go in afterwards, and
Yeah.
Do you tell him to stop?
Playing with.
Do you tell him to stomp his feet? Like,
No. That's all Jeff. That is all Jeff.
The reason why bathroom humor is funny is, as Homer Simpson would say, it's funny because it's true. Like, everybody has to go to the bathroom, and it's just, so everyone's familiar with things that can go wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, and in Dumb and Dumber, Jim had played a trick on him and he got him good, and it was a horribly embarrassing situation for him, and he just nailed it. He just nailed the.
It's also
absurdity of it.
funny in every culture. It's all funny. There's no culture where they don't giggle at a fart.
That would be on my headstone. The farts are funny.
Yeah, and also the odd thing about that one is we were writing script for 9 years before we ever got our first movie made, which was Dumb and Dumber. And our parents were like, what are you doing out there? We're on LA, we're writing scripts, we're selling them. And they're like, so where's the movie? So they're not making them. Like, so how are you getting paid? Well, they pay us, and then, so if you get paid more if they make them, but they don't get, Anyway, so they finally come to the set for the first time. We're making a movie. Our parents fly out from Rhode Island. We're in Utah, I think.
Yep.
And it happens
Donnie
to be
and Marie studio.
Happens to be the day we're shooting Jeff on the toilet. This is the first thing. I swear to God. And they come walking on, and they're like, they're on a movie set, so they're nervous to begin with. And they look over, and there's Jeff Daniels, like, and we're like, they're like, what kind of movie is this? Like, oh, it's a comedy, Mom. It was. They were a little freaked out.
There were no sound effects then. It
No.
played differently.
But I remember my father holding my mother like this, like, what are they doing? This is their movie.
I remember the guy. I wish I could remember his name, but he was in the post editing room putting in those sound effects, and we'd listen, like, okay, a little more at the beginning. Oh, that squeak, we love that squeak.
Yeah.
So he just, it comes to life.
Yeah, and you do have these sound effect guys. This is the thing about a movie. It's like, we're not doing everything. We got like DPs, directors of photography, you got first ADs, you got everything running the show. But the sound guys are very important. And I remember another thing in that movie, the snowball in the head.
Yes.
With the snowball. He had like 50 sound effects that weren't funny. They were like, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. And then he called us and says, what do you think of this one? And he put like a whooshing sound, and then he had a big hard hit. And we started laughing our asses off. And he says, yeah, that sound was the crack of the bat on Babe Ruth, on Henry Aaron's 715th homer.
That's the sound he used. It was
wow. Well, are there any other Easter eggs like that with the sound effects, like in Dumb and Dumber or even Dear Santa, where like the I always love the one where like Jeff Daniels is outside of the bathroom and it hits him, it goes before he goes into the actual bathroom. I'm like, what are those sounds?
Genius sound guys.
Genius sound guys putting in what Jeff had already given us.
Yeah,
he did something like that, right. And then so we put it in there, but. It's a combination of great acting and great sound.
And Jeff doing like what he's gonna he gave us so much. By the way, we have to talk about PJ Byrne.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like
I messaged him last night because we all follow each other on Instagram.
Oh, yeah?
In the middle of the movie, I'm messaging him, and I think he responded back. I did it for America.
The best part is when he's walking and the farts are in sync with the
Yeah. But by the way, that guy's a genius. PJ Byrne, he is like he kills us.
PJ is hysterical. And not every scene he's in is a funny scene. He's a really good actor too.
Yeah.
Like, so he's one of those guys who can be really, really good acting, playing it straight, and then super funny.
Well, he was great in The Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah.
And he was in Bear Run, and he's just like, he's one of our favorite go-to guys.
Well, talking about guys that you've used multiple times, there are a handful of actors, obviously, who you guys have gone back to, whether it be PJ or Jack, or obviously Jim Carrey, Zac Efron. I'm sort of curious, when you work with someone and you instantly love them, is it your mission from that point on to find something else to work with them on, or is it just, hey, I really hope another project comes along that's perfect?
It's the second one. We don't like, we're writing a thing, and then when we're casting it, we're thinking, oh, I do like to go back to our people, mainly because you get to know them, and they need money for their health insurance and stuff like that.
No, we've been blessed. We've worked with some great comedic actors, the Bill Murrays and Woody Harrelsons.
Oh yeah,
Jim Carrey.
I love Kingpin.
So
Oh yeah.
we'd work with any of them again. So you can't work with all of them at once, but we're lucky if you work with them a second time.
Yeah, we haven't had a bad experience, honestly. Like, you hear stories about people having run. We had no bad experiences. We've had, like, the actors we've worked with have been, they've been fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, that's the key to comedy for us anyways, is, have fun doing it. And these guys always bring a good attitude, and it's fun. And so when it's fun, it becomes funny, hopefully. And we love working with them again.
Yeah, it is. Like, that's the first thing we say on the set is, like, let's have a good time on this movie, because you know what? Like, obviously we're here to make a movie, but when we die, we're not taking the movie with us, but we're taking everything that happens on this set. That's going. Where it's these relationships, and we try to do that, and it makes making a movie a lot of fun and very easy. It's never really stressful shooting a movie for us.
No.
I'm sitting here looking at you both, and I'm honestly, this is a very surreal experience for me. I've been doing this since 2010 or whatever it is, but to talk to two filmmakers who have been literally a part of my life. And I'm going to tell you this story. I was 14. My mom took me to see something about Mary. And I remember sitting in that theater when Ben Stiller goes to the bathroom with the hair gel sequence. And that was a moment I've never felt more embarrassed in my life, because I'm sitting there next to my mom watching that scene. And so I've always wanted to ask you both, do you guys have a moment like that in your childhoods where you watch something maybe inappropriate with your family and not knowing what you were watching? Because I had no idea what I was getting myself into when I sat down for that film.
I actually, it's funny. I probably haven't thought of this since it happened, but I was 13 years old, and my father, for some reason, there was 5 kids, me and my brother, 3 sisters. But for some reason, I was with my father. We were down Cape Cod, and it was just the 2 of us. He said, hey, let's go see a movie. So we went to see a double feature. And first movie was MASH.
Wow.
Yeah. And there were, I think there were breasts in it. And I was like, the whole time like this. And the second movie was The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, which was like all breasts. And I was just sitting there like, I don't know whether he was like, this was his little thing of like, Pete, this is
you bastards. Why didn't you bring me?
You were too young. You were too young for that. But we went, by the way, I never thought about it again, because I was like, just uncomfortable. But
it's traumatizing.
I'm very happy too that he took me.
Well, that scene that you talked about in Mary, what I remember is that the older people, your mom's age and above, they laugh just as hard as anyone else, because they've been around and they've seen things, and it wasn't just a laugh that little boys are going to laugh at. It was one of the few in our movie history that older people almost laughed more.
Is this podcast? Is this like anything goes podcast or?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, because there's a funny thing. When we did our first premiere, it was in Rhode Island. We always try to go back to Rhode Island for a premiere, and we did it. And something about Mary, it's out there. Like there was a chance that we went too far, and you're going to lose a lot of people. And we were concerned with that kind of thing. It tested great, and we pretty sure. But anyway, I remember when they came, everybody was coming out of the movie theater. It was in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. And my mother's friend, Mimi, who was 85 years old, came out, and she saw my mother, and I'm watching across the thing, and she goes, Marion. She said, I loved it, but you know what my favorite part was? And my mother goes, what? She goes, when she had to come in her hair. I swear to God. And I'm like, holy shit, this is going to be fucking huge.
That'll be a big hit in every nursing home in America.
No, at the moment I thought this could really work.
Well, that perfectly leads into my next question, because I always loved Jeff Daniels has that great story about meeting Clint Eastwood for the first time on a golf course, and Clint Eastwood came up to him and famously said, "Oh, the bathroom scene from Dumb and Dumber, that happened to me." And I think everyone's just sort of, again, to your point, it was just one of those, like, it's universal. It's a thing that everyone understands. What is the most interesting celebrity reaction you guys have ever gotten from one of your movies?
That's a good question. Hold on, let me think about that.
I don't know the answer to that specifically, but I know this. Like, we work with some people that didn't necessarily do this sort of thing. Remember when we worked with Cher
Yeah, oh yeah.
and Stuck on You? It's like she had, she was so funny, and no one asked her to be funny. No one asked her to do these things, and she was so much fun and so funny. And we joke with her like a lot on the set, and she was just so much fun that I mean, it's a treat for us to meet people like that and get them into a comedy and just let them let their hair down.
And Meryl Streep too. Like like Cher and Meryl Streep, like to be around them, they're such icons, and we have such respect for them. But when you're around them, they're telling you dirty jokes. They're fun. They're just a good time. They're it's just like amazing to be around people like that.
It is. It's fun.
Did you guys? I've always wanted one of my favorite trailer jokes of all time is Stuck on You, and it's like Academy Award winner Matt Damon, Academy Award nominee Greg Kinnear, 4-time Academy Award watchers the Farrelly brothers. Did you guys come up with that joke?
No.
I don't know why. Like, all these years later, I still remember dying laughing at that trailer in theaters.
Yeah, no, we got to give them credit when credit's due. Those guys,
Tony Sella probably.
Yeah,
right?
Tony Sella probably came up with that.
A good trailer is important, and those guys are great at it.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I'm gonna take a bit of a serious turn because one of the things and especially in Dear Santa and a lot of your films, you address bullying in a very interesting way. And if you look, I mean, I was somebody who was bullied heavily in school, and Peter, you and I have talked about this before about, like, I've had depression and anxiety since I was a kid. I'm on different medications and everything like that. But yeah, I'm on Prozac. So I find that your films, while really funny, they do tackle this thing where you feel less alone. A lot of your characters are beaten down in a way, but then they have to overcome and kind of become the heroes of their own story. And specifically with the child here, he's being bullied in school in the beginning. He wants to get with this, he wants to date this girl, and she has no interest in him. Can you speak about the bullying theme in your films? Was bullying something that you dealt with when you guys were in school, and kind of bake that into your storytelling? Because I always felt less alone watching a lot of your stories.
We dealt with bullying a lot in junior high. Like I can't tell you how many kids we bullied. How many was like a couple hundred?
You got
the weakest.
So
there's always the one kid who's the weakest in the class.
And we bully him. We attack that guy.
No, but were you guys ever bullied in school?
I don't know if it was that so much, but we saw the bullying, and you're in the playground, and there's not much you can do, really. You watch it, and we were never fans of it, that sort of thing. And the bully's usually a guy that he's got his own issues. That's the thing. Most of the time he's got his own issues. But when we tell a story, we like to take the POV, the point of view of a guy who's an underdog, who's up against it. And in this story, Liam, he's got a lot on his plate, okay? He's not the coolest kid in the class. He just moved to town. He's got some learning disabilities. There's a lot that he could be bullied about, but he's the guy that we like, and we want to tell his story, and hopefully he can overcome all these challenges and have a happy ending.
Yeah, when we first started, and of course I'm joking, I've never bullied anybody in my life, and I hate bullies, but we never did get bullied. Really. We kind of like
It was the two of us. It was because there's two of us.
Yeah.
That whole thing, the same as movie making. There's two of us. You're a little bit stronger.
Yeah.
So, we won't pick on them. We'll pick on that kid over there.
What was I saying?
We didn't bully, but you didn't like bullying.
No, but what did I start saying there before that? When we started making movies, we wanted to be the Zucker brothers. We loved the Zucker brothers and Jim Abrams. And those guys, like, I remember they inspired me in ways. First of all, I love Airplane. I love,
Naked Gun, all that stuff.
Top Secret, Kentucky Fried Movie, all those things. I thought they were hysterical. But more than that, when I saw them on like some talk show, I guess it was Carson, I remember thinking they're not that different than us. And it was the first time in my mind, I thought, well, maybe we could do that. It put the thought into my head, but we love them. But I remember when we started making movies, I thought, as much as I loved them, I thought, if I was going to do it, I would do one thing different, and that is try to add a little heart. Because if you watch like Airplane, you know, you really don't give a shit about them. I mean, it's funny. You laugh, but you're not afraid the plane's going to crash, and you don't really care if it does, because they're just jokey, which is awesome. But that, I thought, imagine if you cared about them too, if you had a little care. And then when we did Dumb and Dumber, our first one, that was the moment we took in the beginning, when Jim Carrey, and I think I've told both you guys this story before, but when Jim Carrey in the beginning tries to talk, Jeff into going to Aspen, and Harry's like, no, I'm not going, Lloyd. And Lloyd plays it straight. He goes, come on, man, I don't have anybody. I don't have anything. And he played it perfectly straight, looks out the window, and he wells up. Jim Carrey's like genius. He's like suddenly from hilarious to very, he's emotional. And anyway, the studio, they saw the dailies. They called us 2 days later. They go, what the hell is this? Get that out of there. This is a comedy. I said, hey, in 2 minutes, he's going to be selling a dead bird to a blind kid in a wheelchair. You better like him. You better like him. And that's where it is. You get away with murder if you like the guy.
It's a little bit of the Andy Griffith formula. The show we loved, and we used to watch it every day when we wrote. And you never knew if they were going to do something just comedy, or if it's going to be something that was very serious. And they balanced both.
Yeah.
So well that it became our favorite show.
Yeah, you always felt something. Andy was the God figure, and Barney was the humor, and you always would laugh, and you always felt something. And that influenced us. That show influenced us more than movies, because we didn't see a lot of movies growing up.
No.
Wow, that's why the Satan character that Jack Black plays is likable in the film in a fun way.
Trying to promote anything along those lines. We're just trying to tell an interesting, funny story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going on the record now, anti-Satan.
Me too.
Guys, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Hey, that was a lot of fun.
Thank you guys. Thank you very much. Thank you guys. We love you guys. Seriously, thank you.
We want to thank Peter and Bobby Farrelly for coming on the ReelBlend podcast. We want to thank Peter for returning. We had him as a previous guest. He came on to talk about the John Cena comedy Ricky Stenicki, and during that time, we talked to him about Green Book and the Oscar campaign, and that's a really fun interview to go back and listen to as well too. Really digging into some of the things that we bring up on the show often, which is how comedy gets overlooked in the awards categories. And so, not that I expect Dear Santa to compete in the Oscars this year, but in general, comedy, even when it's done really well, horror, even when it's done really well, tends to get kind of ignored through the Oscar campaigns. So, I'm going to be really curious as we get into December and something like Nosferatu starts to compete, because Eggers is obviously an Academy favorite and tends to make really compelling films, and he's taking on the Dracula mythology. So we'll have some conversations about that as we get into more shows in December. What else can we look forward to in December? Well, we can confirm that on next week's show, we're going to have Jude Law and Nicholas Hoult as our guests, paired for a film they have coming out called The Order, which is definitely worth your time. We'll probably talk a little bit more about how Wicked is doing at the box office, and maybe even Gladiator 2. The two of them are contending. We also have Moana 2 that's going to be arriving, and Kev took a really long flight out to Hawaii to speak to The Rock on behalf of Moana 2. So we'll probably have some insights of him about that interview and that trip. And then we have our top 10s, which we always do at the end of December. So you're going to want to keep it here on Cinema Blend's ReelBlend YouTube channel. The podcast is available in all the different places you get your podcast needs met. But if you're on the YouTube channel, hit subscribe, turn on your notifications, leave us some comments down below. I'll try my best to respond to everybody. And come on back whenever you get a notification that there's a brand new ReelBlend waiting for you here on the channel.